Well, hello everyone. Really great to have you in the session with us today in this meeting. We are here to continue our conversation, and some of you may have been in this conversation before, some of you may be new to it today. This is the third in 4 sessions that are really a conversation about youth voice and youth-led practice. And our aim with this is to really hold open a space for us as a community of people who are practicing with youth voice and have youth-led practice as part of our work, or who want to, who are interested in finding out more. So these sessions have been put on with the support of Arts Council South East, and it's from us at Arts Work in partnership with our colleagues at Norfolk and Norwich Festival, and then actually a load of different people who've been really generous to come and share their practice and also talk through possibilities and where they might want to go next. So far in this series, we've had one session that's been about why. Why do any of us, all of us, want to work more with youth voice, with youth-led practice? And the second one was about listening to and hearing from young people. So what some people might term as consultation, but then what you do with that information and how you show that, it's had a point. I'm just going to ask everyone again to mute if that's possible, because I can hear something in the background, a conversation. Thank you. That's lovely. Oh, bit of feedback still. Annabelle, I don't know if it's possible to mute everyone centrally. If you can, that seems to have gone. So thank you. That's great.
So do you want to
or not? Okay. Today, what we're exploring is co-creation. So really sharing creative power with young people. We're going to hear about co-creative practice from 3 different organisations and some of the young people they work with. Things like, what do they actually do to set up frameworks that genuinely empower young people and enable co-creative practice with them? What do they, for example, communicate up front, such as how much power and influence the young people will have, and about what? How do they enable their young co-creators to engage as equals in creative conversations? How do they stop themselves from guiding the process towards an outcome that perhaps they or other adults might have imagined? So we're going to hear from those 3 speakers. And actually, I should have said at the beginning to describe myself, because each of them will describe themselves. I forgot to do this. Sorry, just check everybody. Are you on mute? And if you're not on mute, please mute yourself. Thank you. So I'm Louise Govier. I'm the Chief Exec of Arts Work. I forgot my introduction, not very good. I'm a white woman in my 50s with a blue jumper and short blonde hair and glasses. And I'm very pleased, as I said, to be part of this session today and holding this space for us to share practice and experiences. So we're going to have 3 different organisations giving us a short bit of inspiration, and we'll have time for some questions after that. We'll have a short break around 4 o'clock, and then we'll come back and break out into small groups where we'll be using and exploring a co-creative approach. There'll be some prompts and a little challenge, and then we'll be noting what we observe and learn along the way, and come back and feed that back and wrap up with some final observations, and we'll finish at 5. And we'll share also a top tips sheet that our speakers today have contributed to, and that we've drawn from other areas of practice. So you have something really practical to take away today. Okay, so we will get into our speakers, and then I think when it comes to questions, you can either stick an electronic hand up or pop something in the chat, and we'll keep an eye out and make sure that we can get those questions across. Right, so we're going to start with our speakers from Zoe Logic, and that's Zoe Golding and Ollie Webb, who's a young person that works with Zoe Logic Dance. And Zoe's going to talk about the approach that they take in their organisation to co-creation, co-creating dance with boys and young men, particularly in underserved communities. So I'm going to hand over to Zoe and Ollie now.
Hi, everyone. Nice to see you all. Thank you for taking the time to spend it with us this afternoon. So yeah, my name's Zoe Golding. I'm a white woman in her 40s, but a soul in her 20s. I have long brown hair, half up, half down, little bun on top of my head, wearing a stripy white and blue jumper today. So I'm going to take you through just a little bit of my practice. And then I've actually got Ollie here, who is one of our youth company members, but also now works for Zoologic as a project coordinator. So his trajectory has been amazing about his sort of experiences of co-creation from being in the work to now supporting and delivering the work. So we're going to share the space together. I started my journey in co-creation very organically, if I'm honest. I started Fuzzy Logic, male youth dance company, when I was 19 years old. And I just knew I liked to make. I found out very early on that I liked to create and direct and choreograph rather than be the dancer. And from that, I realized that a lot of my work was task-based. So I'd have an idea, I'd lob it in the space, I'd play with whatever was created. So by nature of the way that I did that, I didn't know what co-creation was. That wasn't a thing on my radar ever. But it meant that I created this equity in the room where it was a to and fro, which I truly believe co-creation is. It's about a conversation. It's about gifting ideas to each other and keeping that flow going throughout the creative process. I was the international producer for an event called Rock Challenge, which was all about putting young people at the heart of kind of their experience. So I learned again very early on what the arts and what dance was giving young people. It was really tangible. I saw it improve their lives. I saw how what I was offering created some safe spaces for them to be, to discover who they were. So it was more than the art form for me. It became a very personal place of growth and development for me and those that I was working with. So that put people at the heart of what I did, which is what Zoe Logic is all about. It's driven by the people that we work with. I then later down the line, 10, 15 years later, did that thing. Zoe Logic was born. And you do that thing. You're like, yeah, we've got this community we want to work with. And we've got the funding and we've got the idea. And I walked in and I had all the bits of the puzzle organized in my project plan. Everything was very, very tidy because my producer brain had kicked in. And I realized as I walked in that these people didn't want to do this at all. And I was like, oh, okay. So again, this was years ago, but I literally then just surrendered it. I threw the plan on the floor and I was like, what do you want to do? And that was the first time I think I was really aware of what it meant to bring people into the process rather than just the product at the end. It was a real moment of enlightenment for me that I got through that session quite happily by being sort of that interrogator, that questioner, that delving deeper, and that my artistic practice then helped me create something with people. So then I guess that was a realization of what I mean by co-creation and what I mean by working with people and embedding that as a practice, really. And for me, there's no better role than to bring people's imaginations and ideas to life and be someone who can make that possible. I think that's something that's always driven me, is that's the kick I get, is watching that happen and people realizing the involvement they had. So I'm going to share a few slides with you, hopefully, if the tech works, and the video, as always, we'll put that caveat on every time I touch something that's technical. I'm going to hand over to Ollie and hopefully give you some tips at the end. But yeah, please do keep any questions listed, and I'm happy to answer them now or even later after this session. Right then, hold your breath, everyone. Give me that smile face, like empathy face that's always needed in these moments. 3, 2, 1. Can you see it? Someone might just need to speak to me because I can't see you all.
Yeah, we can see it.
Thanks, Ollie. Back up as always. So, as I said, I started to really realize that co-creation was actually a practice. I started to delve more into it. This was about, I'd say, about 8 to 9 years ago. And I started to build my own little process. So we're going to use one of the examples that from Fuzzy Logic to sort of demonstrate this. But this is where I think really my process begins. So if we're making a work, for example, we've got the youth company, we're going in, or I'm working with a community group, anyone I work with, I tend to start with where does the inspiration come from, rather than my idea and placing it on people. And I start to ask questions. And these are the sort of questions I ask, like, what's important to you right now? What challenges do you face currently? What do you enjoy doing? What are the things that are grabbing your attention? So really trying to create a moment of discussion around that. And I love Post-its, as anyone who's worked with me knows. I'm a Post-it fiend. So I love the idea of littering walls with ideas. And then ultimately working with the people in the room to distill that down. So I often see current themes, sometimes age-related experience, lived experience related. You can kind of see things that can be grouped. So then that allows me to kind of facilitate, really. I see myself as an artistic facilitator, and this is something I'm developing in my own practice now of holding space. But we then move the next stage of exploring the relevance of some of those themes. I take them through, what do you think are the themes here? And I lead guided questions around those that delves a little bit deeper. Depending on the environment, I go into things like, okay, if you were to think of a theme of redemption, where would redemption happen? What world would it be in? Would it be in space? Would it be in a jungle? So I start to world build with people. It doesn't mean that's going to be the direction we go in, but I love to hear and create space for voices and responses, which is really, really kind of part of the deal for me. We then have a process of what I call sort of work alone, but work together. So it's something, again, in my facilitation practice, which is really helping, where I set little tasks, very much like the breakout rooms you're going to go to. People go off and then they bring their ideas back. This allows all voices to be heard, in my opinion. It allows those who maybe are not as confident to talk up in group settings to contribute. And it also gives kind of one idea per Post-it. So we see the magnitude of how many ideas are in the space. And then we create a voting system quite democratically. What grabs your attention? And as that's happening, I'm watching, I'm listening, I'm stepping back, I'm hearing the choice-making discussions, which are really vital to understand people's reasoning. And then we sort of go from there, really. And what I'm going to do now is take you through a show we created with the youth company called The Doorman, which started in lockdown. We were online the minute lockdown happened that week, and we were online for the entire time, every week without fail. And this was a real moment, again, to kind of use time as a friend, which doesn't happen much when we're back in the live world, even now, to kind of go into this process a little bit further. So we created with the guys a show called The Doorman. This is the participants here. This was devised over a series of sessions online. We couldn't get together, but we went through everything, as I said, from idea to step design to roles, responsibilities. The lads really took it on themselves, having worked with me in the room a lot prior. We'd never done a lot of pre-production together like this, but this was a chance because we were in lockdown. And the Doorman was born. When I say they're involved in everything, I mean everything you see them wearing, everything you see them hear them say, everything you see them present on stage. And Ollie's going to talk more about this later because it's his lived experience. I was just a witness to the journey of it in a way. They did create a little promo, which I hope is going to work. This was a teaser devised by them, so you can get a little flavour for the feel of it. Again, totally made by them. So just give you a 50-second here.
Hello? I heard there's something going on. That's what they said.
I think I know the secrets.
We've got all sorts of people trying to get in and I don't really know why I'm here. How do I go in?
There's one step I can't figure out. Can you just give me a hint?
I know your secrets. I've been watching you. I can hear you there. And I can see that little shadow.
Everyone here's really weird.
Hello?
So that was the Doorman introduction. It's a bit emotional, actually. It takes us back to a very, very special time when I see it all like that. It was really nice to put this PowerPoint together for you. So throughout the process, my creative practice is about setting missions and getting people to solve the missions, like handing over responsibility, handing over the problem in effect, or the mission. And not one tip for me I've learned is not trying to interrupt that too soon if it's going away, like really giving space to other people to solve things. Whilst that's happening, I feel my role is to ensure that everyone shines in a piece of work. Doesn't mean they all have solos, but it does mean there's moments where the attention is on them and the world and the skills that they have are amplified. I think this is really important in a co-creative practice, that everyone is seen and everyone is heard. And that can be in the process outside of the room just as much as for me in work on stage. So as you can see there, I think most people got a solo. There was duets, there was moments, people were introducing it. Some people did more digital, some people spoke to camera more in the promo stuff. There was a whole array of that, and making sure that, I guess the offer is multifaceted. So there's many opportunities for people to feel valued and heard. And they're involved in every single piece, ultimately. The moment here, I'm going to hand over to a lovely looking Ollie there on the screen. You can see here how the young people are just grouped behind me. I'll talk about those processes after Ollie, but I'm going to ask Ollie to talk to you about his experience of this particular project, but also a bit further on than that, and how we use and how he uses co-creation now in his world. So Ollie, I can't see you, but I'm hoping you're there.
I am. Hello. Hello. Yeah, I'm Ollie. I am Zoe Logic's project coordinator. I am a white male with brown hair. I'm wearing glasses today, and I have a beige jumper on. Yeah, I mean, this project for us was like, for me, really was my kind of like, I'd only ever been dancing before this in terms of the creative world. So for me, this was a real kind of delve into the other things around what dance might be for me. I was lucky enough to kind of be kind of thrown in the deep end really with like there was a question right at the beginning when we jumped online, like, what do you want? What are we going to do while we're online? And we sort of like dreamt a little bit about the process and kind of some things we could do once we're out of lockdown, and what we're going to do when we all get back together. And this is kind of how that was born. And quite naturally we kind of took on those roles as a group because we were all just sat in a Zoom meeting like, what the hell do we do? Of okay, well, who's going to do what? How are we going to do that together? Who's going to take on the storyboard? Who's going to take on the set? Who's going to take on the props? And kind of just use that time when we're all just sat in a Zoom to sort of like dream that up together. And Zoe just did this like brilliant thing of where she just went, right, well, there you go. There's the things. You take that, and we'll move forward with it. So I think that was really important to making a co-creative process so co-creative, in that right from the beginning it was our responsibility of what was going to happen. And because of my interest in wanting to produce more things and stuff like that, I sort of said, okay, well, I'll take on some more producing roles in that, and started to look with Zoe at the storyboard, about getting space, all of those different things that come into producing a show. And yeah, I just worked alongside Zoe and making that happen really. In terms of the process, once we actually got in the room, I think what was really important was that there's never any silo conversations. It's never creative team and performance team or vice versa. The conversations, I mean, as you can see on one of those pictures, was always brought into the same space. So whatever Zoe and Andy, our rehearsal director, were thinking, they also brought those conversations to us, and it was always a decision made as a group. And I think that meant for a really kind of safe environment for everyone to be able to come forward with their ideas and sort of show uh, the sort of story we were trying to tell in a better light, I guess, because we were able to kind of get our story across instead of the thing being sort of put onto us of what we wanted to do. Yeah, I think having a space as well where everyone is on sort of like the same level is really important. That there's no hierarchy within the room. Another thing that I think was really important, especially with this process, but something that Zoe does a lot of, having things visual. A co-creative process, I think, is so much easier when everybody in the space can see the plan is or what things might sort of happen. That's why you can see with like the picture in the previous slide about the post-it notes and stuff, that all of that stuff was up on the wall, so we all had an understanding of where we were at, which I think definitely helps a co-creative process. In terms of how that's kind of like developed for me, that, as I said, that process kind of gave me a understanding of what I might feel I want to do as I grow up. And I kind of went, oh, okay, actually, I like dancing, but maybe there's more to this. I like the creative process. I like being outside of maybe the room a little bit more and going and working with Zoe on this sort of thing. Um, so yeah, that kind of took me on this path of like, okay, well, how am I going to sort of develop myself? So Zoe basically just took me under her wing and went, okay, let's run with it, see what happens. I sort of did an apprenticeship with arts work. I'm now the project coordinator at Zoe Logic. But that process and working so closely with Zoe has just given me a real good understanding of how to work with people and for people. I think experience is so vital to a process, because there's no point you as a person going into a space and dictating what's going to happen. It's really important to go in and ask the right questions and not just say, I'm doing this for you. We've got to do it for them. So yeah, I think that's kind of like my process really, and how that's helped me develop. But that was my like in really, I'd say, that show.
Thanks, Ollie. Thanks for sharing that. It's really beautiful insight. It's also nice for me now to watch Ollie flourish in his own spaces and how he holds spaces so brilliantly. So to also, you know, facilitate support and hold that for someone else and hand these skills over is really great. Just a little bit left from us, really, in a sense of it takes investment from everyone. I picked this picture because Kai is such a committed performer. You can see there by his face, like each of these young men knew their role, they on stage and off stage, and they gave everything because they saw us give everything back. And I think that again is about authenticity in this space. I know people talk about that a lot. I really sort of champion that. But it really is about standing for what's needed. They wanted a full main stage show. They got a full main stage show. It was an hour of pure joy. It was a sold out audience, and it was extremely high quality. A lot of these young men have been with me a long time, so it was that utopia moment when they were really ready for the challenge, and they all stepped up, just like Ollie. Ollie is sort of championing all of them really in this voice here, because he was that. So a few tips for me really. Be clear of the ask and continually check in. Like you heard from Ollie, I was always saying like this way, that way, where are we going? When I say clear of the ask, also clear of the situation. Co-creation, I believe, happens in many levels, and sometimes co-creation, there's a difference between co-creation and leadership. And sometimes I'd be like, right, guys, I'm going to lead this moment because decisions going to need to be made, but you're going to come back in here. And those, be really clear of those worlds, because sometimes we can just get a bit lost in a sense of too much co-creation that sometimes loses direction, especially when we've got to make a show. But really open about that really meant it was really great, because it was like, yeah, on, off, in, out, and people really knew where we stood, which was really good. Be ready to pivot, even if it means a better experience. For me, this meant sometimes I had to get more money. I had to find a different space. I had to really listen and respond, rather than say, no, we can't. Champion for quality of experience, not just the outcome. The journey is really important, as most of a lot of the other speakers, I'm sure some of you all know too. Youth voice front and center, their words. We have a group of young people from the community we work with. I took them to a presentation, and what they said, I was like, oh my God, but their words were amazing. They were authentic. They were them. It may be not of how I would have described it in the world that we work in, but it was so true, and it was so honest about their lived experience that that's what mattered. And stick to their voices really, and share the challenges. I was very open with the lads. I still am now with people in the room when I'm stuck myself creatively. Quite often they'd look at me and go, do you need help? I'd be like, yep. So really showing when things were a challenge for me, and how we could actually solve some things the other way, was really, really exciting for the journey. So ultimately what it led to is this beautiful bunch of humans, and this is, again, everybody we work with through Zoe Logic, we hope to give the same experience to. Very committed, very lovely, but also connected, loved, cherished, and memories were created forever. So yeah, giving great experiences is our motivator. And that's me. And Ollie, thank you.
Oh, thank you both so much. That was a brilliant share. Thank you to Zoe and to Ollie. Really appreciate that. I'm going to say if you've got questions, please either pop them in the chat or save them for after we've heard from all three speakers, or three sets of speakers. So creating dance with young men in lockdown and otherwise. Let's move to another organisation, to the Strike a Light Festival, to Charlene and Emma Jane, to hear about their co-creation work with young people, and also how it's changed their approach to programming, knowing that they want to co-create work. So over to you, Emma Jane and Charlene.
Hi everyone, lovely to meet you all. My name's EJ. I'm the artistic director of Strike a Light. I have white grey hair, I have large glasses, I have my Zoom red lipstick, I'm wearing a white t-shirt, and I have 2 chains around my neck. And this is my colleague Charlene.
Hello, I'm Charlene. I am a mixed race woman. I've got dark curly hair and glasses, and I am wearing a black and white top.
What's your job?
Oh, my job, I'm head of participation at Strike a Light.
So Strike a Light is a non-venue based organisation. We are from Gloucester. We are here to serve the people of the city. We don't mind visitors, they're also welcome, but our primary function is to be here for the city. We've been going for 11 years now, and interesting, Zoe, you picked up on something that was really helpful to us whilst being a really awful period in time. COVID gave us an incredible break to breathe. We too went online, everybody stayed working, but it allowed us to really shift our practice to think about how we could do things differently. And that moment of breathing has brought a new iteration of Strike a Light. We're always interested in how we evolve and change as an organisation. And when we came out of COVID, we completely changed the way that we worked. Previously, we'd been programming about 24 events a year. We'd moved from a festival model to a year-round organisation, and we reduced our work because we believed doing better and doing it deeper and for longer was a better way of working. So we now only programme 12 events a year, and we are really committed to the communities that we work in. We have community producers that link artists and communities. And we have young people's work that sits at the forefront of everything that we do. We've always had a participation strand, but now more than ever, it feels like it's one of the most important things that we do. Co-creation has become a really important part of the way that we work. It's not the only way that we work, but it has become important, both in the work that we're making and the work that we're programming. And Zoe, just picking up on something you said that I think is so important, and I think is a moment where people feel a lot of fear around co-creation, is that idea of leadership. Co-creation still needs leadership within it, and there are times and places where that rises to the surface, but co-creation is messy. It takes more time, it takes more investment, but it does still need a little bit of leadership. We're going to do our talk in two halves. We don't have any slides, it's just us. So we're going to talk a bit about the way we work with children and young people, and we're going to talk briefly about the way that we programme. So I'm going to pass over to Charlene, who's going to talk.
I've tried to make this as simple as I can, and I've tried to focus on the setup of co-creation with young people. So actually, what are some of the things that happen before you get into the room? Because this is also a really important part, and it was nice for Zoe to pick up on some of the things that happen and the exercises when you're in the room. My first point of thought is, where is the room? That's a really important question. When you are making co-created work and you want to work with young people, are we asking them to come to us all the time? If you are a venue-based organisation, asking a group of young people to come into that space can often be quite daunting. And from our perspective, a lot of the young people we work with come from challenging backgrounds. There's a lot of economical barriers to accessing the arts within Gloucester, and also we're not a venue in ourselves, so we have to go to where the people are. So for us, being in a space, we consider that that's one of our top priorities, even when we do the schools work, after schools work, youth theatres, youth dance, where is it located? Because if you want young people to co-create, they have to be able to attend. That's the first thing. You've got to think about not just who's in the room, but where is the room. And that space is really important for those young people to feel it's a space they can be in freely. Sometimes working in schools, asking young people to come back to a school hall can often be challenging if it's a rival school. So thinking about that, it's not things we would think of as adults, but it's definitely things young people think about, going into different locations they're not comfortable with. So choosing your location, you really have to think about those young people and does it feel safe for them? Is it safe for them to travel there? Where are your young people coming from? Are parents able to get them there? These are just fundamental things when you start to think and plan about working with young people. My second point is in with the old and in with the new. We have a practice here at Strike a Light, and we're quite fortunate that we do have a lot of regular activity. So we heavily invest in our facilitators and our practitioners so that they are continuous throughout the academic year. And what that allows us to do is to invest in them for their CPD, for all their types of training. But it means the young people they're working with, they know those young people, and that's really important. Trust in co-created work is it's paramount. If you're asking people to come with ideas and share, and you're pulling topics kind of out of thin air, you don't want to be met with silence. So all of that relational work, it takes time. As EJ said at the beginning, it's an investment. It takes time. It's slow work. And you notice if you do this work for a long time and you're using practitioners over a period of time, the relationship with the young people eventually, if the relationships are going well, it produces a different kind of work because the trust is different and you get more honesty out of those young people, which is important. What we do tend to do though is we will bring in other organisations, and for this year one of our youth theatres is going to be working with a company called Complicité, who are predominantly physical theatre movement based organisation. Our ethics match Complicité's quite well, so our company ethics are aligned with them. We're not bringing someone in who's so polar opposite to what we do. It makes it challenging for young people to engage in. So both organisations, Strike a Light and Complicité, we are working for this project with no predetermined outcomes. That's been set from the off. Before we even get into the room with those young people, that's the foundation. Both organisations know this. If you're bringing other people into a project and you have a different mindset, that becomes challenging for the young people. Because if you're saying, yeah, you can do what you want, and then someone else comes in and says, actually, this is my vision, it doesn't work. And it's really confusing for those young people. Something that Zoe picked up on, which is just bang on the money, is ask and listen. We are experts in what we do, this is our background, but we're not the experts at everything, and we can't be the experts all the time. When we're working with young people and we're saying, what are the things you want to do? If they say they don't want to do it, they don't want to do it. Now, there's two things that can happen here. You can do some exercises to interrogate that thought a bit, because that's really helpful. I think it's also helpful to challenge young people as well and say, well, why not? Because sometimes it might just be they don't know about that topic, and that's okay. You might get a young person in a room who's like gunning for something, and another young person who's like absolutely not. And it's just because the understanding of a topic is different. So to have a platform to explore that is also a good thing. But if they are telling you no, it's a no. And, we've learnt that the hard way. I think it's really good to have, forums like this where we can say about everything that works. But I'll be really honest with you, one of the most challenging shows we ever had was a piece when they weren't really invested in the topic, and it wasn't very co-created. And what we experienced was a spike at the end, you know, the end performance, the shows, they're already happy, and yeah, we pulled it off. But actually, when we started to evaluate with them, it was a case of we hated the process. So for us, that was a really good bit of learning. They've got to be invested in that process. It doesn't mean every session they're going to come in and be on top form, but they've got to be able to run with the things they're putting out into the world, because they're the ones doing it. They're the ones who are going to be vulnerable and exposed. And although, yes, they get to perform and it's all wonderful, it's quite telling, it's quite showing to do that in front of an audience. So I've got a minute left. Oh my goodness, I'll hurry up. Another thing I would say is endless possibilities. When you are looking at budgets and drafting budgets, think big, don't think small on young people. I know it's a really tough climate, but for us, we program our young people into our program. It's not a youth theatre show, it's a show. And we try and aim for the same excellence. So we will put in a line for music, we'll put in a line for, staging. We might not get everything we want, but we want to be able to say to these young people, this is the money we've got, what shall we do? Think big, not small. And my last point is framework versus rules. I think that's really important. We're creating frameworks that young people feel safe in. We're not creating a set of rules like school. Shared values. What are your values as an organisation? Do the young people agree with your values as an organisation? We've got a thing called our 7 ingredients, which is, I'm sure EJ will put it in the links, you can have a look through that. We have those 7 ingredients throughout every single thing we do and touch in this organisation. That includes our youth work. It's not separate, it's one entity. That's it.
Great, thanks, Charlene. I'm just going to talk really quickly for about 2 minutes about the way that we're programming. There are some incredible pieces of co-created work that are being produced by organisations, youth groups, all sorts of different places. And there is a question about what's the legacy of that work. Zoe's company have created this amazing piece of work that was by those young people and for that place. What happens to it next? Strikerlight are really quite interested in how we can provide some programming opportunities for those co-created pieces of work that are made by and with young people. So a couple of places for you to go and look at to sort of see the kinds of work that I'm talking about. Our youth company produced the last show called Brainstorm that was originally by an organisation called Company 3. It was absolutely incredible. It gave our students the opportunity to use a framework that had been created by another organisation and young people to add their own stories. So it was a semi-co-created piece of work, but not an entire co-created piece of work. The piece that we are currently looking at programming is by Multi-Story Orchestra. They are a Peckham-based orchestra. The piece is called The Ends. I'll pop it into the chat when I've finished. Piece of work that was made with and for young people following a death of a student in their school. And they made a piece about knife crime and the impact that it has on their community. Very particular to that place. An absolutely astounding piece of work that now has the ability to tour to other places and integrate the voices of other young people from around the UK. Another fantastic company based in the Southwest called Stacked Wonky, a dance company that works with young people from the locale. Amazing work that is performed and made by young people and that has an absolutely brilliant impact on audiences. 2 pieces of work to look out for. One's called 4 Minutes and the other is called Are We Here for the Meeting? So I think for us as both a organisation that makes work and programmes work, finding space to continue the legacy of co-created work feels really important. I don't think it only has to exist in the place that it's made. And I think it's an interesting conversation for us to be having as programmers as to how we include co-creation within our own organisations. Doesn't always have to be made in this place for it to have value as a co-created piece of work. I think if there's a way of integrating local voices in previously co-created work, that's really helpful. but I still think there is room and space for us to be programming work that is made by and for young people in other places across the UK. I think that's probably enough for us to have talked about. Thank you for having us. I'm interested and excited to have some questions and chat in the breakout room. So thanks very much, everyone.
Amazing. Thank you both. Really interesting point about programming outside of the place where something was co-created. More platforms and more platforms, and that's still going to be hugely relevant. Thank you. Okay, we're moving on. This always happens. We think, well, we'll speak for about 10 minutes and then there's a little, you were brilliantly on message with that, but sometimes our time goes away from us a little bit. We've got one final set of contributors, Cara and Rachel from Make Play, who are going to talk a bit about how they co-create play spaces with early years children and their families, and then also some of their learning about condensed co-creation and really trying to co-create in a dynamic and shorter term way perhaps than some of the longer term relationships that we've been hearing about. So over to you, Cara and Rachel. Lovely to have you.
Hello. Hi. It's great to be here and to share some of our thoughts on the work that we're doing with children in the early years and children at primary school age. So I'm going to talk a bit about early years, and Rachel will talk about some other project work that we're doing with young children. So I'm Cara. I'm a white woman wearing a dark green top. My hair is back.
I'm Rachel. I am also a white woman. I've got brunette hair and glasses, wearing a purple jumper.
Okay, so we run a company called Make Play, and that's an Ipswich-based early years arts organisation. And we kind of make innovative, exciting environments for children to come and play. So I'm just going to show you a few photos of that so you sort of know what we're talking about. And we kind of term these as playscapes. Hopefully the slides will work. Is it working? Oh, sorry, technical issue. Here we go. So here are some of the playscapes that we've made recently, and we use a lot of colour, a lot of texture, sensory elements in our playscapes, and a lot of loose parts play. And these environments have been designed for children under 5, is predominantly who we work with, and their families to come and explore, to kind of use their sort of creative energy and their creative potential in really unstructured ways and in ways that are as free from sort of adult intervention in terms of play as much as possible. So we hand make all of pretty much everything that's in a play space. We base all of our playscapes on ideas of the play schema, which are sort of typical ways that children might play with things. So we know that generally children really like to envelop themselves in smaller spaces. They like to transport items around the room. And there's lots of various kind of ways that children traditionally kind of play. And the way that we sort of design these spaces are for children to have real sort of creative control over how they're going to be in that space, how they're going to come up with a new way of playing or a way of sort of testing and trialing ideas out about their play and sort of learning about the world around them at the same time. And we don't have a venue, so we deliver these playscapes in all sorts of different community venues. We've worked in libraries across Suffolk. We have been commissioned to develop playscapes, for example, like a Tudor-inspired playscape for the Wolsey 550 project. And we work in schools. We've worked with Year 5 students to make a playscape for early years children in their nursery group at school. So we work in a variety of sort of different settings, making these sort of spaces that animate a space and really we really strive to sort of develop children's creative confidence through play, but also just sort of raise expectations around early years and creativity, because a lot of what's available for early years children are quite structured, structured sessions and things like that. So we really want to sort of expand children's imaginations around play, and you won't sort of see anything recognisable in most of our play sessions. There's no sort of recognisable toys or things to play with. It's all interesting objects made of interesting textures, and constructed in ways that can be taken apart and redeveloped and reimagined and repurposed. So how do we sort of approach co-creation in our play spaces with early years? So we kind of we sort of thought about the idea of sharing creative power, and that's a really interesting concept to us because we are predominantly working with children before they go to school. Often children, you know, they're non-verbal at that moment, they're all pre-linguistic stage. And co-creation isn't necessarily a sort of first thing that pops into your head when you're thinking about working with very young children. No one really thinks to ask a 1-year-old what they think they want to do or what they think of their experience. So we work with this, and we see our role really in that space as artists and designers and makers, but really our sort of key role in one of our play spaces is to be a really diligent observer of what's happening in the space. We sort of know that co-creation is possible with this group because children have this unlimited creative sort of agency and potential and ideas and energy that isn't always fully realised, isn't fully nurtured, isn't necessarily fully understood, and early years groups can often be sort of seen as audiences in participatory work, not necessarily as sort of active partners in the creative process. So in our role as sort of a diligent observer, we're really trying to do the heavy lifting of co-creation in some ways, which maybe sounds a bit counterintuitive, but we're not asking children for feedback or for suggestions or to guide the process. We're watching how they play when they're in their deepest sort of flow state of play, when they're in their sort of element really of playing and just being completely absorbed in how they're interacting in the space. And we are watching that. So we're trying to sort of recognise what seems important to them, what is a popular popular sort of item in our playscape, new ways that children are coming up with playing all the time. What are those? How are they working? What got them to that point where they tried and tested different things out, and sort of ways that children extend play. So we often take something to an environment and expect it potentially to be played in one particular way, and a child and their friend, or the child and their parent, or child on their own will just play with this thing in a completely unimagined way that us as adults, we hadn't foreseen that. So it's really exciting to sort of observe this way of playing that allows this sort of co-creation of what the space becomes and how the space is used and utilised as artists. So in practice, this sort of means, you know, in terms of like the process that we go through, we would design and make objects for a playscape, responding to the space itself or the theme that we've kind of working towards, and our knowledge of play schema. Children enter the space and start to engage in the play space, and in that moment our work becomes alive. That's when it really happens. That's when it really sort of starts to take shape. And then we observe how children are playing, or the myriad ways that they will play and assemble things. And then our observations of that sort of dynamic of children playing, how they play with their grown-ups there, their sort of bids for attention, and how all of those things are sort of being sort of realised in the space. And that sort of informs how we go forward. So it kind of creates this dynamic co-creation, where co-creation is sort of happening in the moment. It's very spontaneous, it's very dynamic, it's happening as we're there in the space. But children are also sort of informing what happens in a future space for other children. So their sort of power as co-creators is informing how our work evolves and how children might play with what we kind of create in the future. So it's this sort of circularity of co-creation that happens in our space that we feel really sort of really invested in and really excited by. So I think, yeah, the children's voices are really sort of integrated into this process through our observations of them, but we recognise that there obviously is still that power that exists with us as the grown-ups in the space, as the kind of the leaders in the space, that we provide the objects, but we don't really deploy any creative control over what happens in the moment or in the space. We sort of see ourselves as creative enablers in that space. We sort of set up the environment and then let children's sort of creative energy just flourish and flow in that space. And there are no sort of objectives or endpoints in any of our sessions. So it's not structured in a way that this is what's going to happen in the session, this is what's going to come out of the session. And sometimes a session might be a half-an-hour play session. It could be an installation that we've set up somewhere for 2 weeks and we don't actually get to see very much of that. But we believe through how we sort of created these spaces that children can see how they have an impact and how they can have a creative impact through providing a place for trial and error. Really, children can really sort of see how the energy that they put into that space creates a reaction. It can create something new for somebody else to play with, or a different way of playing a different idea. So that's a kind of sort of co-creation method. We obviously recognise it's quite different to some of the other co-creation approaches, and that's absolutely fine. We're working with a completely different sort of group of people. And there are challenges to that. We have to really let go of control in some ways. We are really sort of opening it up to for children to kind of play however they want. Sometimes things get damaged, or they're not, those sorts of things. We have to let go of what we've made, and we might have invested a lot of time in creating a beautiful space, which is instant chaos as soon as the children come in. But that's all part of the beauty of what we're creating. And that kind of tension between creating really beautiful things that aren't really playable. When we first started, we were really, as artists, interested in creating these beautiful aesthetic things that a child might pick up and be like, oh, it's just not very fun, and sort of let go of it. So we kind of constantly learning that we have to have this tension between sort of aesthetic beauty and playability is very real for us. We kind of grapple with that quite a lot. And for us, like kind of the sessions, because they're so unstructured, that can be very uncomfortable for some of the adults in the sessions, where they're quite used to having a very set way of being in the session, where there's a leader in the session that's telling you what to do and what's happening next in the session. Because our sessions are really, or our experiences are really sort of free play and unstructured. Yeah, there is a kind of role for us to step in at times, or knowing when to intervene if in children's play. And I think it's adults that they can be a little bit uncomfortable in our sessions when they feel much more at home in a structured environment. So yeah, that's some of the kind of issues and challenges that we have in terms of co-creating with young people. And Rachel's going to talk a little bit about a new project that we're running.
Okay, so while we started out as exclusively early years, in the last year we've began to work more in primary schools and been sort of commissioned to run different projects with older children and also children with special needs as well. And I'm going to talk a bit about a project that we're actually running at the moment, which has been a really sort of interesting opportunity to develop a really condensed co-creative opportunity. So we've developed the project and we are running it with maybe 7 and 8 year olds in lots of different schools across Ipswich this term. So different to different to our early years work and different to the previous speakers. This is us going in where we have developed the task, and the task is kind of has set parameters. So this is a ball run project that we have designed where children have an hour to work in a small group of 3 or 4 children. So we've got multiple structures with multiple groups in the room at one time, but each group is given a sort of very carefully considered selection of resources that's sort of limited to eliminate some of the kind of choice and to not make it too open, essentially. So we're giving them some parameters that are quite rigid in a sense that we want them to create a ballroom, and we've selected the materials that they're going to be using to do that. They have an hour to do it, and we've got the sort of goal that we want the ball to be able to run for 10 seconds. At the end of the session, that isn't actually measured, and it's not really, we're not focused on that as the goal, really. The children are initially, but we sort of bring the idea that we want children to be able to have lots of fun, and we want children to collaborate together, and sort of meeting the actual goal of getting the ball to run for 10 seconds is sort of secondary to that, really. So it's a very short time frame, so it's quite different to the work that we have done before, and different to some other co-creation projects that we've done and that probably others have done, in that for us, we know the destination, we know what we want the children to achieve, but we just don't know how they're going to get there. And what's different for us about this project is that the children are sort of encouraged to do whatever they want with the resources, and we're in the space to sort of support them, but completely follow their lead. So children are completely in control, and adults in the session, ourselves and adults sort of provided by the schools, are there more to support with. Actually, we're sort of instructed by the children, and it might be that in the session they don't actually have the skills to sort of execute some of their ideas, so we're there to support with skills, but the vision is very much that of the children, so they're very much actively participating, and in charge, really, I would say, of what the kind of how they're going to execute this. And there's kind of, I'm trying to think roughly how many ball runs we've made now, but they must have made sort of 20 ball runs or so by now, and they've all been just so different. So it's a real opportunity for children to have that agency for trial and error, and we found that they just love that kind of very different to the normal school day, because we're working in a school day, very different to just get to sort of work in a group collaboratively where anything's sort of possible, really. And we encourage those really big innovative ideas, and we see lots of really sort of brilliant engineering and children kind of grabbing extra things and trying to sort of create these amazing structures to enable their ball run to work. And we just want children to see that they can make an impact, and that they can make their ideas happen in the short space of an hour. They can go from sort of having a discussion with their group, and then by the end of the session they've actually achieved this sort of amazing, really unique creation, which they're just so proud of. And every group we've worked with has always kind of left feeling like, wow, we actually made that. And yes, it was, the feedback from the children is always, that was so fun, but that was so tricky. They always kind of feed that back, which is sort of bang on what we're kind of hoping for, really. It's an opportunity for them to fail and to think and to problem solve in a very sort of short period of time. But it does have challenges. So very quickly, it's just that sort of gulf between imagination and ability. We get children with these sort of crazily brilliant, amazing engineering minds and just huge ideas, and we are then trying to work with them to sort of realize those ideas, or to realize that we need to scale them back. And there's the bringing together of multiple personalities. And Cara and I actually tested the ball run idea in our own studio, and actually just on our own, and it was actually really tricky, that we realized it was actually so difficult to create a ball run, and we spent 2 hours and we managed to get a ball to run for about 5 seconds. So there's so many skills involved, and that was 2 adults who work really well together with a good sort of working relationship. So bringing in 4 children who are 7 or 8 is really sort of, it can be really tricky to get your voice heard. And what am I doing because you're doing that, and where am I going to go, and I want to hold the stop clock to time it, and all these sort of things. But they have to keep pushing forwards to steer, you know, they've got to reach a consensus to drive their work forwards. So we're sort of pushing for that at all times, and we're there in a really sort of practical capacity, really, to support that. And of course, time is also a huge challenge for us, because the children are with us for an hour and 15 minutes. The final 15 minutes we're feeding back, the first 5-10 minutes we're introducing the task, and then they've really got sort of 50 minutes, hour maximum, to make it happen. But we love the range, and we love what it sort of brings up for the children, the opportunities it gives them, and to sort of feel listened to and heard. So very briefly to recap, for us, for this sort of way of co-creating, having really clear parameters for the task is really essential, as is a quite sort of condensed and considered selection of resources. This idea that all ideas are welcome, and building very much, as other speakers have mentioned, on what children can do. We worked with a boy the first time we delivered this who had no English and no sort of, because of the language barrier, no he wasn't able to interact with his group that he'd been put with, but it was fine because we just wanted him to create his own ball run, and collaborating was too difficult because he didn't feel like he was being heard. So he started to work on his own creation, and it was fantastic what he did. But it's for us about ensuring that everyone in the session has a really positive experience. We're not really focused on building any sort of particular technical skills, although the children are doing that, but it's a focus on building a kind of cohesion as a group, and working towards a shared vision together. And finally, just for them to have fun is so high up on our agenda, because we think sometimes that can be really lacking in the school day. Yeah, that's us.
Amazing, fantastic. Wow, what different and brilliant speakers sharing your practice. That was so good to hear from all of you. Are there any quick questions that people would like to ask now? Either stick a hand up for any of our speakers, and it needs to be an electronic hand, otherwise we might not see you, or stick something in the chat if you have a question now. Otherwise, we can ask questions in the breakout rooms and in chat, and we'll get you answers by the end. Are you ready for a break, maybe? I can't see hands going up just now. There may be something coming through in chat. Okay, I think I'm gonna say let's take a little break, and we have a little question for you, a couple of questions to think about, as well as all of that amazing share. And thank you to all of our speakers for sharing your practice and your tips and your provocations. I think as people go and make a cup of tea, and I'm going to ask you to come back at 4:15, so 4:15, you've got 11 minutes. Think about what the biggest challenges are, do you think, in co-creating with young people in your context, and what might help overcome those barriers. And we'll ask you to pop something into a Menti so we can gather some evidence of what you're all thinking. But yeah, as you go off and have a little break, what are the biggest challenges for you, do you think, in co-creating with young people, and what things might help overcome those barriers? Otherwise, just muse on what you've had so far. Annabelle is sharing a Menti code now, and we'll leave that up, and we'll see you back at 4:15, please. Thanks everyone so far.
Arts work. I am a white woman in her 50s. I have blonde hair. I'm wearing a greyish jumper, and I have hoop earrings in. So yeah, thank you for doing this. It's fascinating. I can see that kind of funding and time have come out, and interestingly, on the previous one, one of those barriers was also time. So, you know, time clearly is quite a key thing here. But what we're going to do now is we're going to do a little co-creation exercise. So imagine that this space that you can see on the screen here is where you are, your location. And in your location, a consultation has been done with young people, and it's come out that 89% of young people in this area say that they feel lonely and isolated. And, you know, the space behind can be something that you can use or change or do something there, or you might decide to do something differently. And what we want you to do is to start to think about, how would you approach this? So, and I will post this slide into the chat, so take it with you when you go into your breakout room so that you can prompt yourself for these questions. So as a group, kind of co-create, if you like, the answers to these questions. How would you go about gathering ideas from a group of young co-creators to address that issue? What approaches might you use? What activities might you use? How would you support the group to decide on one of their ideas to develop into a project? Because you might, if you're working with a whole group of young people, you might end up with 20 ideas. So how do you hone that co-creation down into something that is a workable project? How would you incorporate creativity into the process? So, for example, given the building that I've just shown you, the young people might decide that what they want is Primark. Sorry, but anyone who's spoken to young people, Primark, having a Primark on your street seems to be top priority. So how do you kind of move that process forward and involve creativity into it? And what needs to be in place to genuinely involve young people in creative power sharing? So those are the questions. What we're going to do is we're going to put you into breakout rooms. And in your room, the first decision for you to make is, can you please assign one person to be scribe for you? And I'm going to change the Menti in a second, and that will give that scribe the opportunity to write free text about some of what they're observing. So what kind of things are you thinking about, what's being prompted, but also to think about what are you seeing, what dynamics are you seeing that enables that co-creation to move forward. So I will stop sharing my screen because I have lost the ability to paste anything anywhere. So unless I stop sharing, I can't post this slide for you. So I'm going to stop sharing that, and then I will post to the group, hopefully, the correct slide. And I'm hoping that you will be able to now access that and open it, and that will give you those questions. So it's just a reminder. Louise is going to have put you, hopefully, into groups of 4 or 5 or 6-ish people, so that you can also obviously have a conversation. We're all creative people, and generally when we do exercises, someone will go off-piste and do something completely different, and that's also valid as well. That's part of the co-creation process. So away we go, hopefully, I think.
Yes, I'm just looking for, there is Claire. I'm trying to highlight Claire. There we go. Sorry, I couldn't see you, Claire, to spotlight you as well. So wonderful. So Annabelle, have you put everything in the chat that needs to be in chat before people go?
Everything is in chat before that they need, but what I'm just going to do is I'm also just going to open the Menti as well.
Yeah.
So now on your Menti, you will see a third question. So that's just for your scribe to add in. I'm hoping you can add as many times as you want. You can also do votes if you see somebody posting something and you go, oh yeah, that's a really great idea. You can put a vote on it and that sort of thing.
Brilliant, thank you. I'm going to open the rooms then. We will be just over 20 minutes in this activity. So just start having those conversations. How would you, in your little group, start to enable that co-creative conversation about that space to tackle the issue that the young people have identified? Thank you, and we'll see you in a bit. Great. Well, welcome back, everybody. Annabelle, are you able to share screen so that we can see the Menti? And I'm going to look for you to spotlight you as well. And we can see what people said. Certainly the conversation I was in was very interesting. And interesting about holding space and making sure that other stakeholders understand that this is going to take some time. Right. Do you want to look?
Yeah, sorry. We're really not happy with sharing this, and looking at Zoom at the same time, as my poor group discovers, because I couldn't actually see any of them. But it was a fascinating discussion that we had, and this is really interesting. According to AI, when I click this, you'll be able to see, hopefully. Is it going to work? No, suddenly it's not. I don't know why. Oh, oh, there we go. There we go. So you've got kind of this idea of idea sharing. There were lots of post-its were a big thing, Kahoot. So there was lots of kind of techniques around tools that you could use, WhatsApp. There was lots about the time, and something that seemed to be kind of cropping up quite a lot on the board was about that. How do you get buy-in from other organizations and high, kind of within your own organization, that this work takes time, and therefore, how do you get away from the need for outcomes and fast results and things like that, when actually some of this takes a really long time. How decision making is done, kind of some of that. But I think I'm just gonna take that off again, hopefully. Am I? Come on. No, I'm not. Okay. But all of these will be, I'm going to stop sharing because it's driving me mad not being able to see anything or anybody. But what we will be able to do is share all of this on the Thinkific platform, and so we can share all of those ideas, and hopefully that your conversations were as fruitful as certainly the one I was in, which was really interesting, just kind of trying to tease out the difference in the approaches according to age range and things like that.
Wonderful, thank you. I think we will, well, yeah, we'll pull together the different inputs that you all had. So hope that your individual conversations were helpful, and hope that you will find it interesting to have sent round afterwards. This, Annabelle, I can't see myself, so if you can spotlight me, that would be amazing. Or maybe if I go, oh no, I can do it. I'm getting the hang of my spotlighting. There we go. Okay. We will also, I'll pop in the chat in a moment, the top tips list, which started to be created before this session and which I've added to during the session from things that our speakers were saying. Did we have any questions for the speakers while we have them in the room? I'm just checking to see if you stick up an electronic hand. I probably will see you. Has anybody got a question? I'm not seeing that we have at the moment. You may have asked people questions in rooms. Okay. Okay. That's fine. So we come to wrap up and really appreciate everyone spending time not just listening and being inspired by our speakers, but also being in those rooms and having those conversations and reflecting. I'm going to come to our colleague Jen, who's been working with Norfolk and Norwich Festival, to do a little reflection back, if that's okay, Jen?
Yeah, absolutely. Hi, everyone. So I'm Jen, and I'm a white woman with long red hair and a black jumper on. And yeah, as Louise said, I've been working behind the scenes helping to plan the sessions. And as I've done for the previous two sessions, I've been reflecting on everything we've heard today. And just to close, I'm going to briefly take us back to the wisdom shared by our speakers in sharing a few themes that have come through. So firstly, we so often use the term co-creation, but less often talk about what we actually mean. And I loved Zoe's definitions of co-creation as to and fro, as a conversation, gifting things to each other, and setting missions and asking people to solve the mission. And then a really practical tip from Ollie following on from that, that one key to solving the mission is having things displayed visually so everyone can see and feels part of the plan. The Striker Light team emphasised that it's so important for us to invest in the role and the skills of co-creation facilitators as organisations and as a sector, and linked to that a really important facilitation skill is that co-creation still needs leadership, and that need for leadership rises to the surface at different points. And then lastly, from Make Play, I loved the emphasis on being diligent observers of children in deep flow, listening and noticing, and also the prompt for us to imagine the possibilities when children in the early years have unstructured opportunities free from adult interference.
Wonderful, thank you. It's been a really rich session. I'm gonna just launch a little poll that we would love if you would just have a look at and just fill in for us here and now, if you don't mind. That just tells us whether you found this useful and where you're from. And it also asks the question about whether you're interested in an advice session with someone from Arts Council South East about a particular funding application that might have a youth voice focus, because they're offering that, and we'll follow up with some dates after this session. So if you could just take a few moments to fill in that poll, that would be wonderful. And then I'm also just going to put the link in to the chat, but if you would like to Annabelle's just done, we've both done it, to put in the session for the next and final session in this series, which is about influencing and changing society, which will be led by young people. There will be young speakers, and there will be a breakout activity that is being crafted by some young people as we speak. So yeah, that would be great to see some of you there again. And I'm not sure if I can post the actual top tips in the chat, or whether I need to send it round. Let me just see whether that is. I'm not sure if it'll do that. Right. In, and then perhaps one of the host team would check that for me and see whether you can open it, and if not, I will send it round. And of course, don't forget that all of our resources are in the Thinkific platform, where there are lots more resources as well that will help you on your exploration journey and sharing of practice around youth-led practice and youth voice. Okay, I think we've got a few more people just doing the poll. Thank you so much. If you don't mind doing that, that's wonderful. That's great. Anything else from anybody else? I would just love to thank then all of our speakers for sharing your practice and for the thought that it goes into to hone it down into such a chunk of focused time, because I know it's work that has had so much time to hone it and shape it as a piece of work, and that to actually describe that practice and take the nuggets out is something that properly would take hours and hours and hours to do. So to get it down to those little golden nuggets was just, I know that's a lot of work in itself, and I thank you for doing that and coming and sharing today. And I thank everyone else for coming and being part of this conversation. It's been a really interesting to hear everybody's thoughts and experiences. And hopefully we will see some of you again at our final session, and let's see what the young people have in store for us.